And then there was one. Anthony Albanese will become the next Labor leader and almost certainly unopposed after Jim Chalmers decided today not to run. There are still a few days until nominations close on Monday for the leadership, but no one else is expected to put their hand up. This means there won't be a month-long campaign for the leadership, which may disappoint some Labor Party rank-and-file members who might want to have their say. Others, though, will welcome the fact that Labor now won't be spending several weeks airing its internal divisions over policy, over leadership, and particularly on the right of the party, some are relieved a rank-and-file ballot won't be going ahead, exposing just how far to the left the membership base really is. Now, Jim Chalmers was the last potential challenger for Anthony Albanese. The 41-year-old Queenslander from Labor's right faction represented a generational change for Labor and an opportunity to reconnect with the Sunshine State, which turned powerfully on Labor at this election. But he also lacked the national profile and the parliamentary experience of Anthony Albanese. Importantly, he also lacked support within the caucus and the membership to really have a good shot at winning this. If he had chosen to run, this would have been more about staking a future claim to the leadership and ensuring the party doesn't shift any further to the left right now. But holding out until today, he's probably made those points anyway. So just before lunchtime, Jim Chalmers issued this statement. He says, "I won't be putting my hand up for the leadership of the Australian Labor Party this time around. I do want to play a substantial role in rebuilding, renewing and refreshing our party and its policies after Saturday's stinging defeat. And as a Queenslander, I want the best state in Australia to have a more prominent voice in the alternative government. I spoke to Anthony Albanese this morning and told him I will enthusiastically support him and work tirelessly with our team to give Australians the Labor government they need and deserve at the next opportunity." Now, yesterday, of course, it was Chris Bowen who pulled out a day after entering the race. Today, Jim Chalmers ruling himself out of a race that he never technically entered. What will be interesting now is which one of them, Chris Bowen or Jim Chalmers, emerges as the shadow treasurer. The likelihood is it will be Jim Chalmers, given the criticism internally of the tax policies Chris Bowen admits he designed. But Anthony Albanese's done no deals here. He's offered no one any particular position. So this will only be worked out once he does become leader technically, and that won't happen until the caucus actually meets sometime next week. For now, Anthony Albanese has to keep talking about his vision for leading the party and signalling some of the changes he'd like to make, while respecting that the shadow ministry and the Labor caucus has to have the final say. This afternoon, he paid tribute to Jim Chalmers, who's now cleared the way for Anthony Albanese to realise his dream.
I want to pay tribute to Jim Chalmers. He, in the short time he's been in Parliament, has already made an outstanding contribution to the cause of Labor. And he will make an outstanding contribution into the future, not just in opposition, but in government. I want to work with Jim Chalmers, and I see him as having a key role in the opposition if I am indeed successful in becoming leader of the Australian Labor Party.
So, with Anthony Albanese all but confirmed now as Labor leader, who will be his deputy? Well, there are three names in the race right now, and bear in mind, the deputy is chosen only by the caucus, not by the rank and file, as that leadership process involves. Jim Chalmers is one of the front-runners to be deputy, and for the reasons outlined earlier. Richard Marles is another. The Shadow Defence Minister is from the Victorian right and one of Labor's more hawkish pro-American figures. Part of his pitch will be that he was not part of the leadership group that designed the key policies they took to the election. Richard Marles is definitely in this race for deputy. And then there's another potential candidate, also from the Victorian right, Claire O'Neill. She tweeted today, "Many Labor people, particularly Labor women, have contacted me in recent days, encouraging me to run for Deputy Labor leader to ensure there is a woman in the leader and deputy team. One of the best things about Labor is that women are encouraged to put themselves forward for leadership roles, and I know that will continue. I'm going to talk to a few colleagues about whether it's possible for me at this point." So she's considering it at the moment, and largely, as you saw there, on the grounds that Labor should have a woman at least running for the leader or deputy's position. Now, once Labor has sorted out the leader and deputy positions, the tougher task for the party is going to be sorting out its position on a raft of contentious policies. What did voters actually reject on Saturday night? The franking credit policy? The negative gearing policy? The ambitious climate change agenda? Was it simply Labor's targeting of the so-called top end of town? the high taxing, high spending agenda? Was it, in part, a view that Labor doesn't respect people of faith? Well, Anthony Albanese spoke today of the need to respect all Australians and celebrate our differences.
Now, if I could sum up my approach in one word, to quote the late, great Aretha Franklin, it's this: respect. Respect for people wherever they live. Respect for people, whatever their faith. Respect for people, whatever their sexuality and lifestyle. Respect for each other. One of the things that I think is regrettable about the nature of what has happened in politics in recent times is that rather than our diversity being seen as a positive, it is being seen perhaps that we are a divided country. I think very clearly that we're not. What unites us is much greater than what divides us.
Now, it may be easy at this point to talk about unity, but once Anthony Albanese has to start taking policy positions, clearly it becomes much more difficult. Will he respect the right of regional Australians to work in coal mines? Will he respect the right of strongly religious footballers to say what they think about gay people? Will he respect the right of high-income earners to get a tax break? We'll see. The first test for Labor will be whether to resist the government's tax cuts, which it needs to pass as soon as Parliament can be recalled. Labor's already made it clear it will pass the immediate tax relief for those on low and middle incomes, but until now, certainly through the election campaign, it's opposed the tax cuts for high-income earners, which aren't due to take effect for another 4 years. But the government wants to pass them now as part of one big package. Well, Anthony Albanese signalled today he wasn't in a hurry to wave those top-end tax cuts through.
The idea that you make a decision in 2019 about what happens in the middle of the next decade is, quite frankly, a triumph of hope over experience and reality. The truth is that our international, global economic circumstance is very vulnerable.
So not an encouraging sign for the government there that an Albanese-led Labor opposition will wave through the entire tax package. The government can still look to the Senate crossbench and Centre Alliance. Rex Patrick, their senator in South Australia, signalled they're certainly open to discussions on this. We'll see. They may have to ultimately break up the tax package, get through the low and middle income tax breaks that need to flow right now and leave the fight over the top-end tax cuts for a later date.